Daddy's trying to work, dog.
Dude, I had to go make them stats. You better cut this in. You better edit that in. All
Hey
right,
there,
sorry.
everybody. Sensei Lex
No.
here. Welcome to the Bro Tour, a Commander podcast. Today I am joined by my co-host and my brother from another mother, Sloan. Sloan, why don't you take a little bit of time and introduce yourself to everybody?
That was a fantastic introduction. Thank you, everybody. My name is Sloan. As he already stated, I'm his brother. Alex and I have been playing Magic together for the last 6 years, and what a journey it has been, specifically in the realm of Commander. I am very, very happy and honored to be on here today. I've spent a lot of time doing very small ideas and bouncing ideas for the channel since back in the Deck Builder Society days. And to see us get to the Commander Dojo, get the Bro Tour relaunched, well, launched properly. We had an attempt that we were not satisfied with, took some time off, and here we are. Welcome back. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Honestly, it's really good to be back. A podcast is something that we've always wanted to include as a part of this channel. I think, nowadays, basically everybody and their dog has a podcast. But in the world of Commander, there certainly are a lot of really awesome podcasts out there. Off the top of my head, of course, you have the Command Zone or EDH Recast. There are tons of them, and they're a great way to spend time, especially if you're at work or out and about working out or whatever you happen to be doing, cleaning the house. They're a great way to pass the time and learn some really helpful information. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity for us to kind of throw our hat into the ring and be one of those outlets for people. So yeah, as Sloan iterated, we've been playing Magic together for almost 6 years at this point, which is insane to believe how much time flies. Growing up, Sloan and I were both very nerdy kids, to say the least. We definitely had our share of hobbies, from video games to skateboarding, you name it. We were into all sorts of random things, but as adults, Magic has become this thing that's been a great way of bonding and helping keep us together in spite of distance of living in separate places and, life situations that generally keep people apart. But yeah, it's been an amazing way to spend time together at least several times a month to have this thing to kind of bond over, have conversations with. Magic has been this really kind of uniting thing, and Commander specifically. And yeah, it's been fantastic. We've had a lot of memories and good and bad and everywhere in between. And so today we wanted to take this episode of the podcast to kind of introduce ourselves to everybody, to share a little bit about our styles as Commander players and a couple of memories, both good and bad and everywhere in between. Some interesting moments that we've had playing the game of Commander over these last 6 years. So, with all that being said, Sloan, tell me a little bit about your favorite way to play Magic. What's like your favorite tribe or your favorite deck at the moment to play?
Okay, so I'll break that up into two because those are drastically different. Right
Very
now,
true.
my two favorite tribal decks are the two favorite that I'm running that I own, which is Edgar Markov Vampires, and then the first Sliver Tribal. Um, I run them in very different styles. The first sliver is very traditional slivers. It's, how many can I slam out? Hit the cascade trigger, go from there, rinse, repeat. Now, Edgar, however, it's funny you mentioned the EDH Recast because a few days ago they released their podcast for the week and they were talking about tribal decks and tribal synergies and things. And one of the things that the main host, if you don't already watch them, his name is Joey Schultz, had brought up is an Edgar Markov Aristocrats theme. And that's exactly how I've melded the deck over time to be is all about aristocrats because you can get so much value out of a blood artist or an indulgent aristocrat or even a cordial vampire. I mean, there's so much synergy out of those cards. So I've actually turned it completely into an aristocrats theme. But my favorite deck that I'm piloting right now is Brago, my Brago King Eternal Flicker deck. It's all about the ETB. I live and die by the ETB. The original iteration of it, however, the stacks build, that deck was so good. I love that deck. But over time, my play group started to dislike that deck.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I slowly was, because I didn't want to lose the commander. I wanted to be able to continue to play it. I love the Azorius colors. I just love that build. I love the way that deck plays. I love its lines. So over time, I switched it back into more of that flicker centric style. Um, and then I built an Urza CEDH stacks build. And that's where I get to get out that aggression. I would say my favorite out of all the decks that I do play is probably my Urza deck, but it is the deck I get to play the least.
Yeah.
So Brago tends to be my go-to, and it tends to be my helm. It tends to be where I'm the most comfortable. It's the deck that I've spent, the last 3 years building and working, reworking, tearing it apart, rebuilding it. And through that time, I've really found such a love, and it's a passion. It's one of those decks that's like I've put so much heart into that every time I play it, it feels like it's mine, if that makes any sense.
That definitely makes sense.
And over time, you just kind of I feel like we all kind of do that, because you've done that with the deck, haven't you? You've done that with what you're running right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
With your Ojutai.
Yeah, I've got plenty of decks like that now. Speaking of Ojutai, I ran a Dragon Lord Ojutai list that was kind of this hybrid of Stax and Voltron for quite a while. And then I decided to kind of steer away from that, because when I've recently moved, and in the new area where I live now, living in Florida, the meta here is very competitive, and that's not a bad thing. I'm a big fan of CEDH, but as much as I like Dragon Lord Ojutai, he certainly was not a competitive brew, and I wanted to steer to make that brew competitive. So I essentially took 2 lists, that Ojutai and one other deck that were kind of somewhere in this weird in between, and I mashed them together, and I created a list that is this hybrid. It's a Bant Stacks combo list that pairs up Thrasios. I know, boo, Thrasios, he's lame, but he's an amazing card, and I understand why people abuse the hell out of him. But Thrasios and Ashai, Ojutai Dragon Speaker. A lot of people may not have a lot of respect for Ashai, but Ashai is surprisingly good. He is a 4-drop Azorius creature, a bird. Yay, bird creatures. And he has an ability where anytime an opponent casts a spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he's basically like Forgotten Ancient, but with flying. So that's really neat. And if you're playing, like, there's those like rule of law style of effects that make opponents only be able to play 1 spell a turn. I like those, but I also like being able to play more than 1 spell a turn. So Ishai was kind of my solution to that, by being like, I'm gonna cast as many spells as I can, and I'm gonna let my opponents cast as many spells as they can. But every spell they cast, Ashai's going to get bigger and bigger and turn into this supermassive beat stick and kill you for casting 40 spells in a turn. So it's worked out pretty well so far. I've been kind of surprised. It's like you've experienced, though, with Stax decks. You have to play them at the right table and in the right play group. They're not for every group, and I understand why they get the hate that they do. Nobody likes bringing their casual fun deck to the table and then getting stasis locked out of the game. That is definitely not something people sign up for. You've had a long week of work and get one chance to play Magic.
Definitely a large supporter of doing exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of doing that. As a Stax player, I don't see what the problem is.
I can't understand
When nature's
why.
claim and everything's back to normal.
I know, it's hard to nature's claim, though, when all your lands don't untap. No,
I feel like the ability to lock down a table, it was never my style when I first started playing, but after doing it, I was like, oh, okay, this is where I want to be, because the cannon is made of glass. It's 1 or 2 good removal spells, 1 good Psych Rift. I'm done. You put me that far back, it's going to take me a little bit to build. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, even if I can speed out the gate, you've hit me for so much, because it's not like I'm swinging. I'm not hitting you with big creatures. I'm going to hit you with maybe a 7/7 construct. And now if I can pump out enough artifacts, then yeah, he's going to be a 13/13. But 13/13 up against 120 life, that's going to take a while, you know?
Certainly.
There's time.
Yeah, it's an archetype that has its time and place. I would say if you're in a meta
Yes.
that's has a lot of really speedy, fast combo decks, even if they're not necessarily full-fledged CEDH decks, but are very optimized to combo early and aggressively, Stacks is the natural and must-needed enemy of combo decks. It holds them in check. It keeps them from just belligerently spamming spells all in your face. Stacks is perfect for those kind of environments, but it's also too why I've taken the time, speaking of like favorite tribes and things of that nature. My favorite deck to play at the moment is a Tribal Sphinxes deck around Unesh, one that I've done a deck tech on the channel for. But my list is it's exactly that. It's really big ass flying creatures and counter spells that protect them. And it's not necessarily an oppressive deck. It's just a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
It's a very Timmy style of deck. There's a lot of big creatures, and I'm going to swing those creatures at you. It's like Blue's best attempt at being a green deck. And I really enjoy that. It makes me really happy to see playing like three or four Sphinxes in a single turn and getting a Fact or Fiction trigger for every single one. It's so much fun. Blue over time has become my favorite color, so I'm that guy. Sorry, counter spells and swan songs for everyone. But it makes me very happy to draw cards. I get this giddy, like, magic chubby over it. I'm like, oh fuck, we're gonna draw cards. It just makes me go. So it's been a
It's
lot.
going
That
it's going
deck,
down.
even if it doesn't win, it's just like I'll sometimes, if I got like a Reliquary Tower or Thought Vessel out, I'll have a hand with like 35 cards in it. I'm just like, what do I even do with all these cards? It's kind of like
Right?
lose your mind for a second. But no, you were
Well,
mentioning
see,
that.
I get that same feeling with the first sliver. I get that same feeling when I hit a sliver and I cascade out. It's that same just like, oh, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? It's that rush off the top of the library, and I live for it, man. That's so it's not always gonna be stacks. I don't always necessarily just exclusively want to play that because again, I want to see the game progress. And there are those games where it's like I'm gonna lock it down until I can set my combo, and then I'm gonna win. And that's true. And I actually originally built my stacks build with, like I was saying, with Brago as a way to kind of mitigate some of the combos that were going off at my table, at the table that, my meta,
Mhm.
which you're a part of, but our group is called the Dread Horde. We're so dorky. We take it to the next level. We even named
I
ourselves.
know.
But I absolutely love these guys, and they're good Magic players. They don't bring garbage to the table. And so after a while, it's like how long can I sustain on this? Eventually it's survival of the fittest, and you got to step your game up. And that was the natural outlet that I found to run into. And I feel like a lot of stacks players kind of come from that same process of cutting our teeth, is that we see an open lane, and that's the only lane for us to build into, because what's happening at the table, it's going to happen whether or not you want it to. And you can build all the removal in, you can do this, but at the end of the day, it's 100 cards. You only have so many slots, you only have so many options. The stacks build is essential at the table, again, in the right environment.
Absolutely.
But then when I want to get that Timmy out of me, that's where Rurik Thar comes in. And I love that deck. I have a blast playing it, but it's just creatures. It's Gruul, it's creatures. I'm going to play a lot of creatures, and if you play spells, you're going to get burned. It's kind of like stacks without stacks.
Yeah, stacks without stacks is a really great way to put it. I think over time there have been a lot of commander players who have really bridged this gap between casual and competitive. I can remember a time when we first started playing Magic, and started playing Commander specifically. There was a very obvious dichotomy between competitive players and casual players. you were either in one camp or the other. There was almost this like perceived
Yeah.
civil war, this nerdy civil war between the two camps, so, like lobbing shitballs at one another. Of you don't respect the spirit of the format. You're a scrub who
Oh,
doesn't know
yeah.
how to play real Magic, and it was very difficult kind of coming into the format at that point in time, because I would remember
Hmm.
I am unashamedly a spiky player. I like to play to win. That makes me happy. That is not the most, but one of the most appealing things about Magic in general to me is playing to the best of my ability. And over time, I've learned to taper that a little bit, and I've learned to enjoy the social aspects of Magic far more, and the social aspects of making friends at the commander table and reaching out and being social with other people has become the most important thing
Right.
and my favorite thing about Commander. But I still am competitive, and unashamedly so. And so it was difficult for me coming up in Commander, having people tell me, well, you shouldn't be competitive. You should just kind of accept sucking at the game. And that was always this weird thing for me to get my head around, because I would have players in early metas that I played in who did not think that way. Their thought was, I'm going to crush you like a little peasant. And so I
Yeah.
would be like, well, but I'm not supposed to, because of like the spirit of the format and stuff. But I kind of have to if I want to play Magic. And so it's been nice over time to see this gap bridge and to see these two camps. You still have your outliers. There's extremes in every area of life, but you have these outliers
Right.
still in
Right.
both communities who are still lobbing at each other. But for the most part, everybody's settled in this nice middle ground of like, play whatever you want, just don't be a dick about it and try to fit into the group. I really
Yeah.
enjoy that the community has shifted that way.
Well, and see, and I think that's kind of just natural, though. I think those things are bound to happen with anything. I mean, it could be, it can be anywhere from like, have you ever heard the debate? And to anybody out there who watches the channel that does any like form of like fitness or anything like that, there's a huge debate between basically, basically, the bodybuilding community, the powerlifting community, and CrossFit, right? Those tend to be your three main sectors. Now, if you understand what the three do, they are drastically different, but the end goal is exactly the same, which is to look the best you can look and be as powerful as you can be, right? So it's kind of the same thing when it comes to Commander. It was like originally it was split into such a drastic change. It was like if you played your like Savala Heart of the Wilds, or what would now be or was then like a General Tazri Super Friends, or
Or food chain, things of that
like
nature.
when
Yeah.
you're building or food chain
Hmm.
or yeah, food chain prosh, like you had your own table. You do not sit anywhere else, kind of thing. You do not venture into a camp where people are playing, you know, Ailey's or even Bragos at the time, back when Brago was originally just a flicker deck before he had really taken full shape into a competitive EDH deck.
Hmm.
Um, or you don't sit at those tables. That's not for you. But now at this point, you can. You can take a fully optimized Prosh deck, a food chain Prosh deck, and you can sit at a table where somebody's playing an Alila Bear deck. Because we are all now so aware of the game that we know how to get around that. We will find a way. There's always a way, you know. Now, if you're taking like a turn one, a turn one demonic consultation, then yeah, we need to talk. But that then we get into the whole pub stomping and like understanding. But I know a lot of the times, ignorance is bliss. So if you really just don't understand how the decks work, then you're bound to be able to use that as your excuse. You're bound to be able to say like, oh well, I didn't understand. I didn't understand that this deck was going to do this. I didn't understand what the combo line was. I don't really know where to put the wrench in the plan.
Mm.
And that's fine. And that's its own thing. But that's where, again, that table talk kicks in. It's like, just be honest, just be open. If you want to play at a higher level, play at a higher level. But make sure that everyone else is into it. And if they don't have the deck, give them a deck. Chances are you don't just have one highly powerful deck. Give them one of yours. You probably have two or three, right? Let them play with
Oh
it
yeah, that's
so
a
that they can experience it.
yeah, that's a great way to blend into a table. If let's say you do only have one or two decks and they happen to be extremely powerful and you're in a new meta and the new meta is playing precons right out of the box. Your deck isn't gonna
Mhm.
gel very well there, and you could warn people, oh, this deck isn't gonna blend very well here. First of all, it's not going to necessarily endear you to people or help you make friends because people immediately get this like, is this dude trying to like front on me right now? Does is he trying to stunt with this cool deck or whatever? And
Yeah,
or it will make
yeah,
the whole table unite against you, which they should if you're playing a crazy powerful deck and they're not. It makes sense, but still, playing arch enemy isn't always fun, and so sometimes
no,
that borrowing deck aspect is really nice. I've had situations like that I've been in where it's been like it's also a good way to get to know another person because people's commander decks, typically speaking, not always, but I've found most of the time, are their own unique signature. People aren't always playing a list
yes,
that's exactly ripped off of online, and not that I care. Play whatever you want; it doesn't matter to me. But typically in Commander, part of what makes it so unique is that if three people are playing an Iula mono green bear tribal deck, there's going to be some variation of cards that are unique to them, things that they're running that the other Iula players are not. And you
hmm
can find that kind of universally across a lot of different commander decks. And sometimes a great way to make friends in a new meta when you're blending in, if people will let you. I know sometimes people don't always trust like that, but if you're nice and
yeah,
honest enough, but people will let you borrow a deck, and it's a great way to get to know them and see what their style as a commander player is, because that to me honestly is one of the most appealing parts of commander. There are so many more formats of magic, but so many of them are, people would say, solved. There are a handful of lists that
yeah,
are the best in the format, and if you're trying to be a tournament grinder, you play those decks or you don't play at all. You might be able to show up to an F&M with
yeah.
some unique homebrew or whatever, but if you're trying to be serious about it, you don't show up with anything else. Commander, you can just show up with whatever you want. You just brew a deck with random
hmm
cards you buy out of a fat pack at a Walmart or Target or whatever, and just show up and just go ham in the hotel with a random deck that you built. And I love that. Last night,
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to play Magic for the first time in like 2 weeks. It was great, yes. And I got to play against the guy who was playing Halar, the Fire Fletcher, the Gruul commander, who triggers
Okay. Okay.
off of the I can't remember them off the top of my head, but he triggers off kicked spells. There we go. Now I got it. He's really cool, and he built this cool little budget deck. It was like 150 bucks total. It was a cool little
Yeah.
deck. I've seen Halar before, but I hadn't seen it played in action, and it was cool to sit down with it and watch it just kick some ass and be like, yeah, it's neat to see people's unique little ideas like that kind of come to life. But you were saying that you've recently adjusted your Brago and kind of tuned it away more so
Yeah.
from stacks and more towards Azorius good stuff or some cards that are more unique to you. So could you tell me a little bit about like what is more unique about your Brago deck and why you love it so much?
So originally, obviously, running stacks, you run your main pieces. You're running Winter Orb and Static Orb and Stasis and Tangle Wire, and so I actually removed all of those pieces and shifted them all into Urza. And from there, I was like, okay, the cards that you're going to get the most like fun out of is going to be your Cloud Blazers. If you can pull it off, a Muldrifter, a Peregrine Drake, like really simple cards that, yeah, they have a powerful effect when they hit, but they also are a much slower alternative, because when you're denying other people's resources but you're continuing to untap your own, those cards do become a lot more powerful. But take away all of the resource denial to someone else, those cards are pretty much just off the shelf out of a bulk bin. They're nothing that's really all that they're not super significant. They're not going to do anything crazy. For fun, I slammed an Elish Norn in there just because that card is a
Yeah,
pet card.
it's a
So
monster.
if I have white in my deck, I'm gonna find a way. I will find a way. I love that card. So I slammed an Elish Norn in there. I'm running your typical things that you do have to run in Azorius, and do have to is obviously arbitrary, but or it's more of a objective statement. But I'm running, your spell seekers, recruiter of the guard, the things that are going to go and tutor out what I need and get me into my combo piece, because the combo is still there. I have to win, so I'm going to win through combo. Whether it be dramatic scepter, which dramatic scepter is something I did consider pulling, and just go for a Strionic Resonator with Basalt Monolith combo, and just try and set that up, and then eventually draw out your entire deck if
Mhm.
you have like a confounding conundrum on the battlefield. That card was an amazing replacement for Oath of Jace, because that Oath of Jace was like my main win con. When that card came down, it was like, okay, I need to draw all my cards, but I need to set up the loop. So it's like I have a 5 card combo. It's very stoppable. You see it coming from a mile away. Chances are I'm not going to slam every piece in one turn. It's going to take a while. And that's what I mean. Like, I tuned the deck down, but it actually made it more fun for me, because
Mhm.
now it's a puzzle. Now I have to get my pieces before the table can stop me. And not necessarily saying like, oh, my deck is the most powerful deck at the table. No, no, no.
Uh,
I play against Azur the Enchanter full stacks build. And oh man, that deck is a powerhouse.
mhm.
That deck is mean. Zerd, he might be old, but he's brutal. He knows
Yes.
what he's doing. He knows what he's about, son.
Yeah, he does. Zur is a
Um,
monster.
I'm playing against an Omnath Locus of Creation deck. I'm playing against. Sorry, I had to touch my camera there, but I'm uh, I'm playing against Windgraces and Srams, and you know these decks that are not necessarily toned down. But in order to kind of match that level of resource allocation, I was like, okay, well, we need to bring this one down. But Urza went all the way up through the roof. Now I'm not running Grim Monolith or anything super bananas like that. I still don't know why the hell I don't own a Mana Crypt. That's one of those cards that's not in the deck. And every time I play it, I'm like, why am I waiting? What the hell am I waiting for?
Maybe
It's not
because
going to get
it's,
any cheaper.
$100.
I know, but it's like it was at its lowest at 79. And I was like, it'll go down. No, it won't. What the hell? What
Man,
kind of logic is this?
yeah, its prices are out of control. We'll get to that in another episode of the podcast. But
Yes.
to stay on topic here, no, I think that's a really great way for people who are maybe looking to take a deck that they're looking to have a little more fun with, or take some pieces out to make it not as optimized or not as high powered. You still want to kind of keep the core engine of the deck, but remove a couple pieces here and there so that it doesn't work quite as uber efficiently all the time. It makes it a little more fun, like you said, more of solving a puzzle. I would definitely recommend,
Yeah.
You look at removing cards that tutor. Tutors are very, very efficient, and they're used in virtually every deck for good reason. But removing them from the deck removes that element of being able to just instantaneously grab the piece that you need, which I understand for people who are in more higher powered metas. That really sucks because you want those pieces to be able to win or to defend your pieces if you're trying to go off or stop other people from winning. But if you're looking to tune things down, starting with those tutors, with those fast mana rocks, those things like Mana Crypt and stuff, it makes a significant difference. I have a mono red Perforos deck. It's a stereotypical spam goblins and other small token creatures and burn people out with Perforos. And I've found that since I took out a lot of the fast mana rocks and stuff and focused it more on just kind of being random and fun, I've enjoyed playing with the deck a lot more. And I'm able to play it safely virtually in any pod. And by safely, I mean like I'm not worried about angering people or like feeling like it's a pub stomp situation or people are like, hey, this isn't the right power level for this deck. I can play it against legitimately anything, even little precons and things like that, and feel comfortable and confident knowing that everybody should have a fun game. There definitely are salty moments. Perforos it's burn on a stick, so people are not necessarily thrilled when you hit them for 22 damage in a single turn, but the table adjusts, so you quickly get punched out of the game yourself. So it makes it interesting to try to find ways to survive. And I enjoy that. But I enjoy that in the same way that I enjoy the more competitive builds. I know you were mentioning you have an Urza deck that you enjoy playing that's more higher tiered in terms of competitive decks out there. What would you say are some of your favorite things about playing Urza?
Well, Urza naturally conjures strength. Like the deck itself has 500 different abilities on it that make it powerful in and of itself. Now, originally when I got Urza to put into Brago. And then the one game I actually played Urza, like cast Urza onto the battlefield, flickered it, and got my construct again. I looked at it and was like, this is $40 of nothing in this deck. This is an absolute waste of space. And why? Don't do this. And that's what started the detune, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this the right way. Make Urza take all of the stacks pieces with it, because when I can literally tap my winter orb for, as a Moxen, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. So when
really good.
in shifting that focus, it opened up everything, It opened up a whole world of possibility where, okay, with this deck, realistically, I can be comboed off by turn 6, and that's a late game. That's late. Like that's taking a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, I can set a stasis lock. I can set a winter orb block. I can have you completely shut down by turn 3, and then just sit there. And if the deck so has it, and I don't draw into the piece I need, or I don't hit my tutors, I can sit there and just dirtle for an hour and a half, 2 hours until you finally scoop. And I've had many games end that way, because there is no, it's a strong stranglehold, but its superiority has also led to okay, this deck is superior to the build of Brago. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it right. So this allows me to do the stacks build as aggressively, as intensely as possible, but it also allows me to not have to go to that complete pillage level with Brago, and tune him down as far as possible, and just enjoy the deck for what it was originally when I very first built it. Enjoy the deck for just good flicker fun, And that open availability was something that that kind of cascaded down into the rest of my decks. So I was like, all right, I want one more deck that's of a really high power, that's really resilient, really powerful. That's where the first sliver happened. And well, to be fair, the first sliver happened because last May, in May 2020, card prices went down a little bit. We had that little bit of fluctuation, which allowed me to pick up a Sliver Queen in pretty decent condition. I think she's light played to low tier near mint. Mm-hmm. I was able to pick her up for $94. And I was like, man, if I can get this cheap, I bet I can get everything else. And I wound up building the whole deck for less than $500.
Oh, yeah.
And now the deck is worth, it's worth like twice that just because of her. But again, a topic for another day. But when building that, I was like, okay, this is the next powerful deck. This is the next one where when I play this deck, I'm in it to win it. It's all or nothing. I'm not here to play around. I'm not here to take turns and kind of have the normal camaraderie. Not that I don't enjoy my table talk. Again, my meta's fantastic. I love the guys I play Magic with. I'm always honored to play with them and see them each week. So, but there are those games where it's like, okay, we want to win. We're in this to win this. We're in it to sit down, get this game done, and move on to the next one. And that's the first sliver in Urza is kind of where that sits. But that opens me up to be able to enjoy slower games, but more fun. They're still powerful, but they're slower. There's more room for politics. There's more, nobody's going to politic with Urza. You're not politicking with me. Nobody's going to politic with my slivers, because I'm not really worried about what you're doing. I'm worried about what I'm doing. And then what's my politic? I won't attack you with, 48 damage on next turn. It's like, great. What can be offered back to you? And same with Urza. I won't. I'll tap my winter orb right before your turn so that you can have your lands back. And it's like, but you just shut me out for 4 turns in a row. No, I'm coming for you. There's no politics to really be had. But when I'm playing Brago, when I'm playing, Edgar, or if I'm playing Rurik Thar, there's a lot of politics to be had. There's a lot of conversation, good, bad. So I think that's been the important part of building on those levels is being able to recognize, okay, what when I sit down is the mentality in the game? Is the table's mentality going to be the same? And if I play a certain deck, am I allowing everybody to have the fun that they're looking for out of that game? Because each game is unique. It doesn't necessarily mean that the night is based on that one feeling. Because I think every table does that. It's like, okay, let's play something higher powered. Okay, let's play something more casual. But high powered doesn't have to be the entire night, nor most nights is it. Most of the time at the end of the night, kind of like, yeah, let's tone it down a little bit. Or that's when some tables ramp up and say, okay, let's play some high powered games, knock out a couple, and then I gotta go.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes left before they close. Let's play some crazy stuff.
Exactly. And that's where decks like that can kick in. Where as before it was kind of like all in on Brago being a stacks build. Mm-hmm. So I kind of lost the ability to enjoy my other decks because I was so focused on that one deck. Because it was my favorite. He's my favorite commander. He's my favorite card. Like when you go all in on something like that, it kind of, I don't know, it ruins it after a while.
No, I could see that.
You gotta take a step back.
I think it's interesting. I'm curious how many other people out there who have been playing for, let's say over a year. Those of you out there listening to this who have been playing Commander now for a year or more, I'm curious if your deck building arc is similar to Sloan and I's. So Sloan and I both, starting out building, were very big green mages. I particularly loved building Celestia decks, and we both loved building Celestia decks, as a matter of fact. We loved building around big dragons, like Khans of Tarkir era dragons. I built around Dramoka, and he built around Atarka, things of that nature. Big stompy decks. I remember going to a local game store in the area, shout out to Phoenix Fire Games, and would go down there and dig through their bulk bins. They had these bins where you could buy 10 commons for 50 cents or something ludicrous like that. And I would just go through and dig through these bins and, find cards and come home and build these little janky decks. I remember for the longest time I was obsessed with this really terrible card called Citadel Castellan. It's a 3-mana Celestia creature that has renown. It's not good, but the art is fucking dope. It's really cool. The knight badass lady in the picture has this really cool broadsword, and she's standing in front of her mount, and her mount is like this giant lion with a big saddle on it. It's really cool art. And I remember just sitting staring at this card like, man, I want to play with this card. And then I actually got it onto the battlefield, and I was like, this card sucks. Like, it didn't do anything at all. It just kind of sat there and waited to die because everybody was playing, like Eldrazi or whatever. Little Citadel Castellan doesn't do much against those types of creatures. But it's interesting to see this arc change of kind of going from these more creature-heavy, stompy decks to now both of our main competitive decks, my main competitive deck being a Grixis Consultation deck with a Kess Dissident Mage, are both very blue heavy. Even our favorite decks to play right now, mine being the Sphinxes and yours being Brago, are very blue heavy. I wouldn't necessarily call Brago or the Sphinxes control decks, but when you're playing blue, naturally you're going to have counter magic. Not always, but most of the time people are playing counter magic if they're playing blue. So you're in some ways playing small elements of control at least. It's just very interesting to see that change over time. And I'm very curious if that's been the same way for other people. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not trying to paint it in this light as a negative thing at all. I love the Magic players that we both have grown to become. I just find it very interesting that over time, the spike change trajectory over time. There could be some kind of fun chart for that where you watch people go from playing Dramoka and Atarka to playing Urza stacks and consultation guests.
But I think a big reason too is life circumstances, because a lot of the times, and most other Magic players I've met, Magic is a very, very big expression of self. Just like art, just like music, anything like that. Like Magic is also an expression of self. And I think we both came to a point in our life where, given circumstances, we needed control. It was something that didn't feel like it was there as much. And so through our deck building, we kind of reflected what we wanted, because there was also, phases of where Edgar for me was a very violent and aggressive deck. And I was going to make the biggest presence, because at the time in life, I didn't feel a big presence. I didn't feel very present at all. I didn't feel present with myself. I didn't feel present with anyone around me.
Yeah.
And so that deck was a representation of that by just spewing. And then it could be the same said with Urza or with Brago stacks when it was first built, is like, I needed better control over that. And so that blue slowly started to kind of seep in. And then from there, you take off, and then it's like, okay, well, I want to do this at the best level I can. And I think a lot of it could be situational. And I think that's probably true with most people. And then when I'm having a good night, I'm chilling, I want to play slivers. And I know that's chilling and slivers don't really ever, I've never seen those two correlate. But it's like at my table, at the table I play at, it's an aggressive enough meta that the slivers can very easily be beat. They'll find where there is a will, there is a way. They will rally.
Certainly.
So I think over time you just kind of, you go through those ebb and flows, and you go through that flux, and I think that's what makes the game so unique to anything else. Like I remember you and I were comparing this before, like the formats of Magic as compared to video games.
Mm-hmm.
Commander is Elder Scrolls. It is the Elder Scrolls of life. And there are times where you're playing Elder Scrolls where, if you haven't played it, there's many different renditions. Some people don't know that the name of the series itself is called Elder Scrolls. They just know it as Skyrim or Oblivion or Morrowind or, now ESO, which is Elder Scrolls Online. But for some people, when you're in a certain life situation, you build a character that's more of a tank, that's just going to go out there and two-handed, just broadsword all day, every day. Or you build an archer because you want to be stealthy and sneaky and kind of, based on your life experience and where you're in life at that point, can really determine what you're doing. But then we've said other formats, like I remember you and I made the comparison that modern, legacy, and vintage are Call of Duty.
Yeah, very much.
They're
so.
high-level online or that MMO style shooter. Get up in there, get it done. And I think that's the beauty of Commander. Is Commander has that open world format to it, where given a situation, you can kind of evolve, and you're not stuck and subjugated to that one thing that you might have been at one point. Because I was a huge Tristani token player. Like I love tokens. Tokens are awesome. But at the same time, as my style's gone on, I've not moved away from them, but I've moved to narrow it to only the vampire tokens.
Yeah.
But when I was playing Tristani, it was anything and everything that could make a token, And then eventually you wind up Urza stacks. Those two have nothing to do with each other. The lines, the way it plays, the consistency, those are completely different things. And I know education also plays a big role in it too. The more you educate yourself in the game, the better you want to be. But then that's kind of a given with anything.
For sure.
So, I mean, what would you say if, say you meet a new player tomorrow, you sit down at your LGS and you meet a new player tomorrow. What would you say to him if he presented the same question to you? If he was curious, like, what do I do as a player to find my niche? What do I do? What would be your advice to him?
My advice would be to research everything and anything. So get on YouTube and just find a commander you're interested in. Shout out to EDH Rec and other sites that list tons of commanders, but EDH Rec being the main one, where just think of a color that you like. You just Google mono green commanders or whatever, and scour through lists and see what you're interested in. Don't worry about how many decks are built online about it. Don't worry about what people around you tell you about it, because frankly, I think the format for, more topics for later podcasts, but in a nutshell, the power creep has become pretty crazy in Commander. It's not necessarily a bad thing at all, but cards are very, very powerful and very, very fast more often than not now. And it's easy for people who don't know, what your style is, to tell you you should be playing this way or that way. And if you come to them with an idea of something that you're just curious about, for them to be like, nah, screw that. Don't even try it. Try it. Find something you're interested in and just try it. It's like a bike, really. You got to ride it around to master it. It's not something that's going to happen by just leaving it in your garage or up on a rack somewhere and never touching it. And
Right.
I think it's really important for new players to just embrace everything, because that's a big way that I honestly, and playing, that's the other thing too. Play test. You have to play a lot of Commander. That's a big way that I figured out that I wanted to play more blue, was I kept getting my shit countered. And it was like, I think I should play blue. Because it would get really frustrating to build this big board and finally get my finisher in hand and be like, I'm going to win. And then they're like, no, counterspell or whatever. And that's always very disheartening.
Yep.
So, and I would build decks, I love Jund. Jund is a fantastic color scheme for the uninitiated. That's black, red, and green.
Jund 'em out.
Jund 'em out. It's fun playing like Vexing Shushers and Pyroblasts and Red Elemental Blasts and like plotting to stop the blue player at their own game. It's fun, but it's even more fun playing blue and stopping the blue player with your own superior blue spells, or more well-timed blue spells, or just dumb luck. If more often than not that's the case for me, I'm just get lucky. But it's been this growth process over time, and I think for like what you're asking with newer players, that's the key, is to stick with it. Build what you want to build something that speaks to you. If you don't like it, don't be afraid to try something new. And don't be afraid to express yourself. Like you were saying, we tie a lot of our emotions into, a lot of the times people do tie their emotions and their vulnerabilities and their places in life to the decks that they build and the creations that they create. And I really think that that's something that a lot of people don't think a lot about, and new players in particular may not realize that you can take where you're at in life or however you're feeling and kind of channel that into a deck and make something that's really truly uniquely yours. In a way that very few areas in life that you can do that. You can customize a character in some MMORPG or whatever, or update the skin on your gun in Call of Duty or whatever, but there's nothing quite so unique as having your own 100 card individual commander deck. It's yours uniquely. Yeah. There's not another in the world like it. And that's the one thing I would always want to encourage new people, is to always be unique, always be you, and never settle for anything other than being the best that you know how to be. But even if that's something that other people don't like or tell you, it's not good enough or fast enough or competitive enough, well, it's fine. Maybe not everything needs to be that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know from our end here, to kind of wrap things up in a nice little bow here, I wanted to ask you before we go, what's one really memorable moment that you have had with me or with your current play group, or just something really memorable that you have done with Commander, or something that happened because of your experience and your time playing Commander that would have never happened if you were never a Commander player at all?
So I have tons, over 6 years of playing and 6 years of playing with you. I have tons and tons. We got to experience Command Fest in 2019, the last summer that they did one. We got to go down to a Commander Fest and do the Magic Fest. Well, do Magic Fest and specifically go into the Command Zone and spend a lot of time in there. And there was a lot of really, really great games that were played. I also made a massive mistake and tried to build the Derevi Stacks deck right before I went and play it and basically play test it there. Bad idea. Bad idea. To anybody who's going to be attending a Magic Fest in an area near you, don't do that. Play a deck you know. Don't build new ones. Do it at home. So lesson learned there. But I think there is one that continues to haunt me, and it was a choice that I made thinking I was making the right choice. I was playing with my play group, and I believe, we're about 23 to 25 turns into a game. It was a very long game. And one of the guys sitting next to me, my play group, shout out to you, Jeremy, looking at you, Jer Bear. He looked at me and he showed me his hand. I mean, we were staring down an absolutely debaucherous table. Okay. He leaned over and he showed me his hand. He happened to have a Mycosynth Lattice in his hand. And I had a Merciless Eviction in mine. So I told him, whatever you do, play that Mycosynth. And he's like, why? I was like, just trust me. You just got to trust me. And he's like, but if I do that, one of the other people, shout out to you, Mr. Chris, he was playing a very heavy Memnarch deck. So it was out of hand. So this is only going to fuel his deck from Jeremy's perspective. And I'm like, no, you just got to play it. You just got to trust me. So he plays it. I follow it up, comes around to my turn, and I follow that up with a Merciless Eviction and completely exiled the entire board. It was great.
Ooh, that is hardcore. Oh, man.
To this day, we all scooped. That was the end of the game after that, because it's like, we're not going to rebuild this. They are still so pissed at me for this. I was like, dude, I did what needed to be done. I see a problem. I fixed that shit. When it's broke, I fix it. It was broken. I brought it peace. I think to this day that they never let me live that shit down. Like, I'll try to make deals and they'll tell me they don't trust me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, that shit happened 3 years ago. Let it go.
Yeah, once the trust is broken, you can never get it back.
It's gone forever. Oh man, what about you? What do you got?
So my most interesting early memory was we had just started playing at our local game store, and the Commander night there was always packed out. There's always 20 plus people there playing Commander back in the times before the old Rona hit the airwaves and shut everything down.
Before the 19.
Yes, before 1910, back in the days of the boomers. But it was really epic for me because we had just been playing Commander at the kitchen table, and to go now take that from the kitchen table to this game store that's thriving with people just doing the same thing I'm doing. It was like, whoa, it was electric. It was the coolest feeling ever. And so I remember they were having, their like event for Commander Night, doing their pods where people could win prizes depending on how many games you won or whatever. And we weren't really playing in the pods or anything. We were just kind of off on the side, just kind of hanging out, looking at our decks and catching some like pickup games or whatever. And we were very, very new, very green, still didn't really know what we were doing. And we're like just kind of watching the games and dinking around. And then out of nowhere, we hear this guy at the back corner of the game store just yell, "Fuck!" And we're like, what? So we like turn around and look, and this guy gets up and he like picks up all his magic gear. He's like, oh, he like storms over to a table that's next to ours, and he throws his stuff down like super aggressively on the table. Just boom, this big thud. And then he's just like totally pissed off, and he's looking around like kind of all like wide-eyed and like adrenaline going, and he's like, fuck Perforos, I fucking hate Perforos. And I had no idea who Perforos was at the time, but I was like, I'm gonna look that up. I want to build that. And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh, like burn and stuff. The guy was so mad because he's like, it's only turn 3 and I'm already dead, and like he was like so mad. So lessons for people: don't be that guy. Okay, control your anger in the game store or in public, please. Nobody
It's a
likes a
good
sore
shit.
loser.
We'll bring you on the podcast. If we
Yeah,
catch you getting angry, we're gonna bring
exact.
you on here.
Exactly. Don't do that in public. But also, if you're the Perforos player, be nice to people. Okay, don't make people want to be mad like that. That's not cool. It's supposed to be fun. But anyway,
Because
so
looking on the outside in, he was talking shit the entire time he did it.
yeah, oh yeah, he's
Because you don't just simply kill someone and they get that mad.
no,
I'm sorry, you
no.
don't.
This has been building for
Like,
probably over months. This guy just keeps losing to this deck, and he just can't overcome it. And he's so frustrated, and he's just like, "Why is this happening to me?" It just builds and builds and
boy.
builds, and but no. Outside of that, which was definitely interesting, one of my favorite recent commander memories. I set up a commander tournament in the last meta that I was in. It took a while to kind of get everything going, but it was great. Once it happened, we had 18 participants, which was above anything I ever expected, and it was so much fun. I didn't participate in the tournament since I was hosting and kind of acting as a sort of judge type. I didn't want there to be any room for conflicts of interest or people to think anything was off, so I didn't play in the tournament itself, but I was there to support everybody who was. And it was great. I thought the field was going to be pretty much exclusively CEDH decks, but it wasn't. There definitely was a smattering of super competitive, very, very good decks. You had your, Poly Scepter Urza combo decks. You had like really streamlined demonic consultation style decks built around Kenrith, the Returned King.
mm-hmm.
There was a whole huge variety of decks like that were very, very great. But there also was a lot of representation of more fringe CEDH commanders and also just high-powered brews in general. There were 3 different Zaxara the Exemplary decks. She's a recently printed Sultai commander who she's kind of, I don't know how popular she is in recent times, but she combos really easily with stuff like Freed from the Real and things like that. And people were playing her and loving that deck. There was all sorts. One guy was playing a random dwarf tribal deck. Like people just brought all sorts of weird stuff to the table just to kind of have fun and goof around, knowing full well like I'm not going to win, but they didn't even care. They just wanted to just show up and have fun. And it was great. We had a Urza player who ended up taking the whole tournament and winning the whole thing. But they definitely, they definitely had some competition along the way, though. It was not an easy road to victory, but they got there nonetheless. And yeah, it was a great time. It was just so fun seeing this thing come together, and have it be fun. Yeah, technically it's a competitive environment, but it was more fun than anything else. Everybody left feeling good. Even people who didn't win a single game left with prizes and feeling like they had a great time playing Commander with their friends,
Yeah. Well, and that makes me think of one of the guy Jeremy in my meta here. He built a commander cube, and this last week we finally drafted it and played it. That was a cool experience, man. If you've never done a commander cube, you got to do one.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
To anyone out there, if you have an opportunity to build it, build yourself a commander cube. And if you happen to come across Riku of the Two Reflections and the card Worldfire shows up, you take it. That was me. It was fantastic. He put one band card from each color into the packs, and man, it was fun. It was a good time. I'll tell you what, man, it was cool. It takes some time to set up, obviously, because it's a draft, but dude, it's so much fun because it takes you out of your own comfort zone and just allows you to deck build right on the spot, get it done. And it's just a hoot, man. It's a hoot. And that's a feeling when you walk away and everyone's smiling. We're all smiling. We're all laughing. Even though not everyone won, we had fun.
Yeah, that's the point at the end of the day. Whether you're playing crazy competitive or uber casual or somewhere in between, having fun is the most important thing. But yeah, I want to say thank you, Sloan, for coming on with me today and in future episodes ahead. I had a lot of fun doing this today, and I'm definitely looking forward to more episodes here in the near future.
And thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Thank you to anybody out there who's been staying with the channel and supporting the channel, and especially through the relaunch. I know there was some dead air for a long time. It was really important to take that time and make sure you're doing that for yourself too. You know, take time for you. If you feel like you got some stuff going on in life, take some time, evaluate yourself, evaluate what's going on around you. I know it's been a tough year for everybody. I know it's been a tough few years. The world just seems like it gets harder and harder, and the struggle gets higher and higher. But keep taking that time for yourselves. Keep taking that time for you. Lex, thank you for bringing me on. And yeah, I look forward to next week, man. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
definitely. I'm excited as well. And to everybody out there watching, once again, thank you so much. If you haven't already, if you've watched the video all the way to the end this far, first of all, you are a fucking legend. And secondly, if you've watched all the way to the end and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing with your life? Subscribe to the Commander Dojo. If you know somebody out there who would benefit from my brother and I's bullshittery on our Bro Tour podcast, please share it with them and let the good people know. Share it with your grandma, share it with your mom, share it with everybody. Let people know about the Bro Tour. And as always, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you stay classy and have an absolutely wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there, folks, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.